this, he or she or they might be dead as well. But these Bitcoin have never moved. But this is there's been a huge amount of wealth creation here. So let's see. Bitcoins are mined. You've probably heard about Bitcoin mining. And the analogy is to like precious metal mining, like gold mining. But Bitcoin mining is all done on very special, high-speed, powerful computers. And what they do is they secure the network using cryptography, which is a whole branch of mathematics that I'm not going to go into here. But they basically solve these computational problems. And by doing that, it allows them to write to the blockchain, which is just a ledger of all the transactions that have ever happened in Bitcoin. Now, it requires energy to mine Bitcoin, but it's increasingly becoming a green form of energy. A lot of the Bitcoin miners are in rural areas where they can use hydroelectric power or sort of stranded energy, forms of energy to run these computers, because they obviously require a lot of electricity. So I would argue that Bitcoin is actually, it's a very green form of money. It's energy intensive, but it uses energy for the most part that's off the grid energy. And the other argument I would make is that anything good requires a lot of energy. So the internet uses a lot of energy, but we don't want to give up the internet. Cars and airplanes use a lot of energy. They do pollute the world a little too much, and we're going to try to move beyond that to electric cars. But civilization basically requires energy. And there's a lot of energy in the solar system, in the universe. So this is something not to worry about. But it's also important to realize that a lot of these Bitcoin miners are using green forms of energy. So Bitcoin miners, they create new Bitcoins, and they also process transactions on the Bitcoin network. You can get very technical with this. If you're a really technical person, I'd encourage you to dig deeper, but it's really beyond the purposes of this lecture. So then we run into the kind of common objections to Bitcoin. Can Bitcoin be shut down by the U.S. government? Can it be shut down by any government? And the answer to that is no. This is a map of all the Bitcoin nodes around the world, which are processing, which are part of the Bitcoin network. You can see that they're really concentrated in Europe and Asia and North America, which is really where the big cities are as well, and really kind of the centers of culture. But it's impossible for any government to shut down Bitcoin. Even if they got together and tried to ban it, they wouldn't have any luck because it's so decentralized. There's no one in control of Bitcoin. There's no central authority. There's no central bank. There's no head of a corporation. And so Bitcoin is a lot like one of the analogies I use is it's like marijuana. Marijuana has been illegal on and off around the world. It's never been stopped. And if anything, it's done very well as a black market. As a black market thing. So it's basically impossible because Bitcoin is so decentralized. U.S. government can't shut it down. Theoretically, you could get all the big governments of the world to try to work together to shut it down. This seems unlikely because the world governments, they haven't even been able to cooperate on coronavirus. China and the U.S. Aren't working very well together right now. And, they can't even agree on various trade issues and travel issues. And so it seems unlikely that you'd be able to get everyone on board, combined with the fact that there's a lot of global resentment against the U.S. dollar and the way that the U.S. throws its weight around. And I can say that as a U.S. citizen. And so it's very unlikely that I think there are a lot of geopolitical actors who would actually like to see the U.S. dollar lose its power. And so it's very unlikely, even if everyone decided to ban Bitcoin, they still wouldn't be able to shut it down. It's very decentralized. You have satellites running it in space. You have remote cabins in various parts of the world running it. So it's really not something that can be shut down by any government. It can be banned. It can be made illegal like gold was in the U.S. in the 1930s. But gold just went underground. People did not turn over all their gold to the U.S. government when it was illegal from, call it, 1933 to 1971 or 73, or shortly after that. And so Bitcoin's a lot like gold or marijuana. You can ban it, but you're not going to be able to get rid of it. Now, the other critique I always hear is that Bitcoin can get hacked. and it can get stolen. This happened with Mt. Gox, which was a cryptocurrency exchange in Japan, I believe. The answer to this is Bitcoin cannot be hacked. The only way it can be stolen is if you buy it on an exchange and you leave it there and you don't hold your private keys. If you hold your private keys and no one knows what they are, it's a little bit like a password to a website or an account. No one can steal it. If you think you can hack Bitcoin, or you know someone who can, I would encourage you to check out this website. I'll link to it in the description notes below. This basically shows you the top 100 Bitcoin addresses. Let's just look at number 4 right here. Here's the actual address. We can see this on the blockchain, and we know that the Bitcoin are there. Currently, there are about 94,000 Bitcoin there. They have a market value of 670 million. So this is how the math works. If you can get a really good hacker for me, I'm willing to split this with you. We'll each get paid 300 million. Your hacker will help me hack it. And if you think about it, $300 million, that buys some really smart people. That buys a whole team of really smart people. But it's mathematically impossible to hack Bitcoin. And if it were, these chunks of Bitcoin wouldn't just be sitting out there. Here's $1.8 billion worth of Bitcoin. Here's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. And you can see that, if this were gold, if this were some sort of data, the hackers would be working really hard to get it. And hackers are working really hard to try to get this Bitcoin. But it's just out there. And even $500 million or $1 billion won't pay you enough to hire to get the processor speed or the computers or the hackers to do it. So Bitcoin cannot be hacked. The only way you can lose your Bitcoin is if you store it on an exchange, or you're stupid and you give your Bitcoin private keys to someone else. Now, the other critique I hear about Bitcoin is that, well, it can't be money because it's not backed by the government. But this really ignores one of the functions of money, which is both a store of value and a medium of exchange. So, for example, gold is not backed by any government. In fact, it's actively discouraged by big governments like the U.S. government. The U.S. government doesn't like gold at all, for obvious reasons, because they want you to use dollars. Nevertheless, gold is accepted all around the world. You can use gold to buy stuff in India. You can use gold to buy stuff in the U.S. Right now, there's a huge run on gold. During the coronavirus times, people are trying to buy gold. So this is a good example of something that has value, that's a store of value, that's not backed by any government. And so you can have money that's not backed by government. For example, bags of cocaine are currency in various parts of the world. I'm certainly not encouraging anyone to break the law. Marijuana has been used for really since the hippie days as a form of sort of black market currency. So while we're at this, maybe I should address the other big elephant in the room. A lot of people, the reputation that Bitcoin has is it's just used by people for illegal activities. It's used by drug dealers. There used to be a website online called Silk Road where you could buy illegal drugs. And there is a percentage of Bitcoin that is used for illegal activities. But the one currency that's used the most worldwide for illegal activities is the $100 bill, the $100 US bill. And this is accepted widely by drug dealers all around the world, by money launderers, etc. And so you can't really reject a currency simply because there are some bad people using it. Because there's some bad people using Japanese yen. There's some bad people using euros. But in my experience, most of the people who are interested in Bitcoin, they tend to be tech people. They're not terrorists, and they're not drug dealers. And I'm certainly neither of those things. And so you can have currency. You can have something that functions as a medium of exchange or as a store of value, even though it's not backed by any government. And the examples, we can give all these barter examples, and we can give the example of gold as well. Now, why is it an important time right now to be looking at Bitcoin? Well, there are two main reasons. The first one is that the central banks of the world, especially the Federal Reserve in the U.S., are printing a ton of money. They're devaluing the U.S. dollar, which means Bitcoin and gold will benefit from this. Now, the second thing that's about to happen in May, it looks like May 13th of 2020, there's going to be something called the halving, which you may have read about. And what this means is that the reward for Bitcoin miners is going to be cut in half. And as a result, these Bitcoin miners are going to be producing half as much Bitcoin every day. So there's going to be kind of a software-induced shortage of Bitcoin. This happened in 2012, 2016. It's going to happen in 2020 now, 2024, 2028. And the normal pattern is that you get the halving, and then the following year you get a huge run-up in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin there was the halving in 2016. Bitcoin ran from, I want to say about $1,000 per Bitcoin in 2017 up to $20,000 per Bitcoin in 2017. And now we're having another halving coming in just 36 days roughly. And one way of thinking about this is, let's say you were interested in investing in gold, and I told you in 36 days that half the world's gold mines would be closing. A lot of them actually are closing because of coronavirus. But imagine if I said that. The amount of supply of gold coming onto the market is going to be cut in half. Half the gold mines are going to be closed in 30 days from now. Would you say that's bullish for gold or bearish for gold? It's obviously bullish, assuming that the demand for gold remains constant. If you have constant demand or increasing demand and a decreasing supply based on just basic economics, you get a shift up in prices. And something similar is happening now. People are rushing toward gold, they're rushing toward Bitcoin, and everyone is trying to find a way to preserve their wealth in the face of the money printer. So now is a really, really interesting time for Bitcoin. That's one reason I'm so excited about it. Now, I don't know if Bitcoin runs in 2020. I think it does. I think it goes up for the rest of the year from 7,000. And I think we easily see 10, 12, 15,000 by the end of 2021. But I won't be selling any if that happens. This is what I'm holding out for. I'm holding out for 2 or 3 million per Bitcoin by 2028. There's no, I can't think of an investment that would have these kind of returns over that time period. So we've got the central bank money printing. We've got the Bitcoin halving coming. And so then the next question I always get when I talk about Bitcoin, especially on YouTube, is people ask me, should I buy Ethereum? Should I buy XRP? Should I buy Litecoin? Should I buy Bitcoin Cash? Should I buy Bitcoin BSV? And my answer, and again, not investment advice, I wouldn't touch any of these. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the original. It's the first mover. It has the network effects. And so I wouldn't waste my time with any of these other cryptos. A lot of them are not decentralized. They have a central vector of attack. And a lot of them don't have a fixed cap as well. They just have an unlimited supply that can be produced, especially by a group of insiders or a charismatic founder who can just basically print more money for himself, and then you're back to this guy who we want to avoid. Now, we talked about gold mines shutting down as an analogy for the halving. So then a lot of people will say, well, I can't afford a Bitcoin because I don't have $7,000 to buy a Bitcoin. And this is why a lot of people are drawn to what people call altcoins like Ethereum and XRP and all this other garbage, because they think they can't afford a Bitcoin. Well, the good news about a Bitcoin is it's a very well-designed form of money. It's divisible. Each Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million smaller parts, sort of slices of a pie. And what this means is that if Bitcoin's currently trading at about 7,000, call it 71.45, you can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. So if you buy 0.001 of a Bitcoin, that will cost just $7.14. Now, if this goes up 10x, as I would expect it to, by the end of 2021, you've turned this into $700 and call it $71. And then if it goes up another 10x, as I would expect, you've turned it into $710. And I think it actually, by 2030 or so, you're going to have $7,100. So a very small amount of money, the amount of money you might spend on a Big Mac meal at McDonald's, you're spending $7. But if this turns out to be right, your real opportunity cost is you're spending $71 for that burger, or $710 for that burger, or $7,100 for that burger. So the good news is that anyone, probably anywhere in the world, hesitate to say that, but because it's so divisible. I mean, you could buy